Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
So last weekend, I flew my son Walter. Him and I went out to Glasgow, Scotland for that Willy Wonka experience. My God, that was fantastic. That was just, it was everything that we hoped it would be. It was really, we're on. Oh, hi, everybody. Hello. So tonight on Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen, the four of us will attempt to determine what is the greatest punk rock song in the history of forever. So what we're going to do is we're each going to nominate a song, and then we're going to explain why it is the greatest punk rock song in the history of forever. And why us? Well, because we're the original punks and everybody else is just a poser. And you're free to disagree with us, but if you do, you'll be kicked out of the scene. You don't want to get kicked out of the scene, do you? No, you don't. All right, so the song that I am nominating is a song by the band Youth Brigade. Now, you might remember Youth Brigade for their song Boys in the Brigade. I always just want to call them Boys in the Brigade instead of Youth Brigade. But that's not the song I'm nominating. I'm nominating a song by them called My Angel is a Centerfold, oftentimes just shortened to Centerfold. In much the same way that Millions of Dead Cops were shortened to MDC, it's the same sort of punk rock thing. This song has everything. It's got sexual politics. It's got the hypocrisy of religion. Just check out some of the lyrics, okay? My blood runs cold. My memory has just been sold. You get that? If the man can sell your labor, he can sell your memories. And there's another part of the song that goes like this. Na, 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 na. Now, as you probably realize, that is Enochian for let's all get into the pit and smash the state. I know a lot of you are saying, Rodney, you don't have to tell us it's Enochian. We're all punk rockers. We speak Enochian. But there's some people that might not be part of the scene, might not speak Enochian, and probably don't know that. So that's another reason why it's a great punk rock song. There's a line, and this is where it gets a little controversial. This is where some people make the argument it's not the best punk rock song because of the line, years go by, I'm looking through a girly magazine. And they're like, well, this guy's so punk rock. Why is he doing a sexist thing like looking through a girly magazine? I just want to point it out. It's implied, it's like subtext, that he is a volunteer for the Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And he's just going through there, making sure none of them are in the magazine. It's the same reason all those people were on Jeffrey Epstein's island. They were just making sure there were no exploited or missing children there. Fun fact about this song, maybe you saw the documentary Another State of Mind, which was all about the 1982. It came out in 84, but it was about the 1982 tour of Youth Brigade, or Boys in the Brigade, and Social Distortion. Now, Another State of Mind was originally going to be called My Angel is a Centerfold after this song. Unfortunately, they had to explain to the guys in Minor Threat what a centerfold was. And they said that left them with icky feelings. It just, they didn't feel well afterwards. They woke up with a pup tent the next day. So I'm just going to say this is why My Angel is a Centerfold is the greatest punk rock song in the history of forever. And it's also why nearly every town has at least one punk rock club called Centerfolds. All right, who is up next with another choice? Unless you have some questions about Youth Brigade's My Angel is a Centerfold, which I think I'm qualified to, or Enochian. I'm qualified to talk about either. No, I think I made a firm case then. Ooh.
I have a different nomination, of course.
Okay, so you're up next then. You're being punk rock and jumping line.
I'm just jumping.
He's up next.
If he jumps line, he's going to get kicked out of the scene.
I'm going to go with the song that was more or less popularized by the band Hed Cheese from Philly. You may know them as the precursors to Book of Love. Jade Starling was in Hed Cheese before Book of Love, that synth dance band. Hed Cheese are all girl band. I think their first single was called Jungle Jam, but their second single and their final one was, in my opinion, the greatest punk rock song of all time. It is, of course, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Now, they didn't write the song. It was written by a man named Robert something, but but they made it. I would say more or less, they took it, they changed the lyrics a little bit. They made it a universal song about for a celebration of women having fun. Originally, the song was called In Botswana, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. They took the In Botswana out and changed that to They Just Wanna. They just want to have fun because
No Botswana, just wanna.
yeah,
Now,
not
Joe,
in Botswana. That the original implied that girls from other countries like Zimbabwe or United States or Canada were a lot more serious. They weren't into fun as much as the girls in Botswana. But I think Hed Cheese realized that fun is universal and it's very punk rock. And even though people would probably argue that they're really a synth pop band, I would say they were a synth punk band. They were much punkier than of course than Book of Love, but they were I don't know. If you had to see them, you had to see them live, and I don't think too many people did. They didn't last very long because they didn't get along with each other, I'm told. But that's the
now,
way.
Joe. Oh, sorry, I just want to say now we just need to make this clear. It is a cover, but it is not the cover of the Anti-Nowhere League song "Girls Just Want to Have Fun." That's a separate original piece.
There are
This
like
is
three different girls just want to have fun. I don't know. That's my case. Girls just want to have fun.
Interesting theory.
Right, who's next?
Dan.
I nominate. I thought you guys were going to nominate this one. It just seems so obvious to me. But Marilyn Manson's cover of "Sweet Dreams."
Mhm.
For him to go and take a Patsy Cline song is just so punk rock to me. You know, like what he was doing at the time. He was like, you know, very controversial. And then he comes out with this beautiful rendition of a Patsy Cline song, you know, it's like old country music meets goth. You guys have heard it, so you know what I'm talking about.
It's featured in the documentary "The Patsy Decline of Western Civilization." Yeah.
Part 3.
Part 3, yeah. The Patsy years. That's why Lee Harvey Oswald said, "I'm just a patsy." He's paying homage to her.
But yeah, you know, for him, everybody's expecting something extreme from like, you know, Marilyn Manson or whatever. And I wouldn't even, I don't consider him punk rock anyway. But like for him to go and do something like that is, he's pushing the envelope. He's could get him kicked out of the scene.
You don't want to get kicked out of the scene.
So yeah, that's why I make my case for Marilyn Manson's cover of "Sweet Dreams" by Patsy Cline.
Okay.
Like he didn't do any other cover. Like,
No, he didn't.
Um,
He had to have a rib removed to sing that song.
well, you know, it's pretty punk rock. But before I tell you the name of the song, I'm going to give you a little bit of background, a little history. And I'll try and keep it short. I'd like to take you back to the 1970s in England, to the burgeoning punk rock scene. Our story begins with the rise of squatting, which is to say occupying abandoned houses in London. And back then there was a young lady named Susan Ballion, and she was getting involved with the punk scene, and she soon became a member of the Mayo Street Squat in Brixton. And then there was another young guy on the scene, a punk. He was by a fellow named William Broad. And on the street, he went by the name of Billy. And Billy met Susan at various punk shows, and they soon became fast friends and somewhat of a couple. And at one point, Billy was kicked out of his house by his parents. And so he went out around to the squat, and he asked Susan if he could, you know, he knocked on the door and he asked if he could join the squat. And of course, you know, being punks, they said, sure, come on in. I was lucky enough and I found a rare photo of them in their squat, which you can see here. And they both turned out to be pretty musically talented, and they soon began performing separately in different bands. They both gained quite a bit of success. And they eventually moved on from the squatting life, but still remained friends. Billy, of course, became Billy Idol and front of the band Generation X, and Susan became Siouxsie Sioux and formed her own band called the Banshees. And after their initial kind of success, one night they both happened to be hanging out at a London club, and they got to be talking. And Billy said that he had a song idea, and he wondered if Siouxsie would be interested in recording a duet with him. And the next day they met at a rehearsal space, and Billy played the song for her, and she loved it. And she said it reminded her of their meeting and their early carefree squatting days that they shared together. And then they soon booked some recording time at a studio, and Siouxsie made a few tweaks to the lyrics so that they agreed to a co-writing credit. And as a goof, they used the pseudonyms Anne Orson and Carte Blanche. I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, the song I'm talking about, of course, is Don't Go Breaking My Heart. Again, I was lucky enough to find a rare photo of the two of them in the studio recording the vocals together. And amazingly, we are told that it only took them one take to get it. So they're really talented musicians. The song was released as a single, and it quickly soared in both the British and the American charts. Basically, it's about them falling in love in a pit of filth, and the rest is punk rock history. They performed the song live many times together, and I found the last photo that I'll show you is I found another rare image of a show flyer for their performance at the famous Marquee Club in the early 1980s. So there you have it. My nomination is Don't Go Breaking My Heart, which is a duet, as the greatest punk rock song in the history of forever.
And Dean, yeah, I'm glad you nominated that, because a lot of people know, as you mentioned, they know them as separate artists. A lot of people who watch this know Siouxsie Sioux for her song "Let's Get Physical," which is all about encouraging girls to get down into the mosh pit. Come on, ladies, let's get physical. Let's throw those elbows. Yeah, and I always love that song. And a lot of people, Billy Idol from Generation X, but they also know him from the Starland vocal band, where he had a big hit with a song called Afternoon Delight, which is all about all ages shows, how they used to have these all ages shows in the afternoon for curfew. So, yeah. But I think the two of them together, yeah, I could see that as possibly the greatest punk rock song of all time forever. So you people can debate this in the comment section. Should be really good, or debate it around the family dinner table. I don't care. I've got recommendations to give. It's time for recommendations. All right, so my first recommendation, we're going to talk about New Jersey attractions that aren't there anymore, which would be a lot of people whose names ended in vowels and wound up in the river, but would also include, many of you are familiar with Action Park, also known as Class Action Park, also known as Traction Park. It's where Jill from Hot Breakfast got a scar on her arm, and so he said, "Oh, it was worth it," which I always thought was cool. I'm talking about another New Jersey attraction, one near and dear to my heart and one I really miss. It was called Brigantine Castle. And there's a very short, it's about 15-minute long documentary out there. We'll give you the link. And it is called Brigantine Castle, Reliving the Horror of Brigantine Castle, a Dark in the Park documentary. So it's all about the glory that was. We used to hear the ads on the radio. My wife's a little bit younger than me, and she was like just too young not to, to go to Brigantine Castle. But me and some friends had some beers once when I was a teenager and went there. But Brigantine Castle was amazing. I'm also, my radio show for this month's episode is themed to Brigantine Castle. So I was bombing social media with all sorts of Brigantine Castle inspired images. But I think instead of building a stadium in Chinatown, we should rebuild Brigantine Castle. Rebuild it on an island in the Delaware. There's Hog Island just off Philly. Rebuild Brigantine Castle. I really miss Brigantine Castle, as you may have noticed. Okay, so moving along to the next recommendation, my last one. My good lady wife and I have been rewatching, as we often do, all 5 seasons of What We Do in the Shadows. I'm going to recommend an episode. This will be the third time I've seen this episode, and the first time I noticed it. The episode, it's season 3, episode 2, and it's called The Cloak of Duplication. Now, in this, Cayenne Novak, who plays Nandor the Relentless, the one who's always going, fucking guy. In this episode, he gets to say, the line is, come on, Guillermo, not everyone is lucky enough to hold their great-great-great-grandfather's penis in their hands. I certainly wish I had the chance, or something along these lines. But in this one, he has to. It's a play on the it's the old sitcom trope or whatever. We have these weird sitcoms where somebody would have something and they body jump, and then they dub in the voice. Well, I'd see this is my third watching, and I realized they didn't dub in the voice. Let's mess his name up. Cayenne Novak. What he does is he does all the voices and actions or characteristics of the 4 other actors on the show. So he does Colin Robinson, which is amazing. He does Guillermo. He does Laszlo. I've been impersonating Matt Berry for years. I think everybody does it. This is the way we talk in Tucson, Arizona. But he does it much better than I do. And he even does Naja. So it is really amazing. If you want to see an incredible bit of acting done on this weird little sitcom, you should really go watch this because he nails it. It is absolutely amazing. And for me to be on my third viewing, I usually catch a lot of stuff and go, wait a minute, they're not dubbing that. That's him doing the voices. I was really impressed by it. So I want to give him full props for that. And I think I'm wearing a What We Do in the Shadow t-shirt. So the Vampiric Council, but not Guillermo. Joe?
I'd like to recommend a book, nonfiction. It's called Tyranny of the Minority. It's by Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Zablat. And it's kind of frustrating read, but it's also fascinating. It's a political history, mostly of the United States, but it also looks at democracies all over the world. And it examines how political parties who have dwindling memberships cling to power, the ways that they do that. For example, in 2016, Donald Trump won the presidency, but Hillary Clinton, the Democrat, won the popular vote. And this sort of thing also happens in the Senate and the House of Representatives here in the United States. I found it interesting. It had a lot of history that I didn't know about. So I recommend it. Also, in the very last chapter, it has some recommendations of what can be done to perhaps save our democracy in the United States. I'll just give you a couple of those recommendations. It had make our Constitution easier to change or to amend by maybe making it so that only 3/4 of states need to ratify, or 2/3 of states need to ratify instead of the current 3/4. Also, end the filibuster in the Senate. Do away with the Electoral College altogether so that presidents are popularly elected instead of the way they are now. And putting age limits on the justices of the Supreme Court. Those are just some of the 15 things that they recommend. So
you know what you're going to get in the comment section? You're going to get that guy who's like, we're not a democracy, we're a republic.
This was
your mom's not a woman, she's a hamster,
yeah.
Dude.
This was published last year in 2023. It might be already out of date by the time you read it, but still, I recommend it. Thanks.
I would like to recommend a podcast interview that I just did recently with someone named Jay Bleed, who does the Bleedcast. This is episode 5, I think. It was a great conversation. I haven't watched it, but I don't know how much he's taken out of it. But he seems like a pretty cool guy. And he asked me a lot of questions about, music and playing with you guys. So yeah, check it out. Maybe you guys will do an interview with him too.
This week, I would like to recommend an Instagram account called Get to the Point, Bro. It's run by a guy whose bio states that he's French and bitter. And maybe you already know of him on TikTok because I think he's a much bigger, wider known guy on TikTok. But I found him through Instagram, and I don't really use TikTok. So the premise of his channel is basically he watches videos of stupid people talking to the camera. You've all seen them. And they talk about some event in their life that went wrong or something that they did or whatever. And he watches it for you and he saves you the time and tells you what they eventually get around to saying. So you don't have to watch the whole long-winded thing. For instance, I'll provide a link to one. There's a woman who wanted a black face tattoo, but one, the artist preferred red and that it was too expensive for her. And he saved you 9 minutes and 4 seconds of watching this stupid video. So they're really hilarious. His expressions, he kind of rolls his eyes and just said, he just gets to the point really quick.
I hope he never gets his hands on this show.
We should have him as a guest.
We should have him as a guest, yeah. At that point, bro. Like they used to have, you ever see the Ig Nobel awards? It's like a parody of the Nobel Prize. And there's one guy won one time for copywriting or patenting the comb over, but there's a little girl, if your speech goes over like a minute or something, she just stands there and goes, "You're boring me."
That's basically what this is.
I got to see it then.
Yeah, it's very good.
Are we done for this week?
Yes.
Well, people, we did a public service by giving you 4 options for the greatest punk rock song in the history of forever. So now it should narrow down. You can just choose from one of those 4 next time you're in an argument. Next time somebody says, this is the greatest punk rock song, you'll have some ammunition to fire back on them.
They'll be voting in the comments of our 4 selections down below.